The term Mystery Knight pops up a lot when going through all this story's lore, Westeros lore in particular. They don't got knights anywhere else. Mystery Knights are exclusively contenders and tourneys that choose to not reveal their true identity for whatever personal reasons. Knights that fight in actual battlefields while hiding their identity don't get this cool title. As much as I want to talk about Renly's ghost, he just doesn't fit the description. Garland Tyrell, Loras and Marjorie's older brother, put on the deceased Renly Baratheon's iconic armor, full-helmed with the Baratheon-style antlers, confusing the hell out of the opposition during the Battle of the Blackwater. The shock gave him the advantage, but since it wasn't a tourney, he was called Renly's Ghost instead of a Mystery Knight. This title immortalizes you. Well, that's if you can actually joust. Who wouldn't give their support for the medieval version of Moon Knight? The small folk loved cheering for a spectacle. Sir Barristan Selmy mastered the art of secret identities at the age of 10. The ballsy kid borrowed some ill-fitting armor and a horse, then tried his best to fit the description of a Mystery Knight. A tourney was being held near his family's home in the Stormlands, and I'm sure they were also in attendance. Houses in this part of the Stormlands are known for their skill in battle, so his father, also a knight, was probably in the tilts. You can't really pretend to be a seasoned knight being a scrawny little 10-year-old, so everyone laughed off his challenges to joust. All except one. Prince Duncan Targaryen of all people took on the kid's challenge, pitying him and appreciating his display of bravado. The prince dropped him on his ass and unmasked the kid for all the audience. Duncan Targaryen named him Barristan the Bold, appropriately for this, and that epithet stuck even as an old man. 6 years of training later, the foolish kid was gone. Barristan, at 16, was ready to try this out again, the right way. In his next tourney, close to 50 years in the past, Barristan hid his identity once more in order to enter the lists as a Mystery Knight. He wasn't a knight yet, and a squire can't compete with proven knights in a joust. Hiding his identity was the only way he would be let in. This time, he unhorsed Prince Duncan Targaryen, and even defeated the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard at the time, Sir Duncan the Tall. The king knighted Barristan himself after he was unmasked. We never get to find out who won though, since this bit of info was only mentioned in passing, but Barristan definitely stole the show. Over the years, he would go on to be the most celebrated tourney fighter in the story so far. Sometime later, during a tourney in Old Town, it would be Barristan doing the unmasking to a fellow Mystery Knight. A man simply remembered as Black Shield was defeated by Barristan Selmy, revealing him to be a bastard belonging to House Mullendor and the Reach, so within the same kingdom as Old Town. We don't get a real name for Black Shield, but being a bastard from the Reach, we can assume his surname was Flowers. Before becoming a Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Duncan the Tall also entered a tourney as a Mystery Knight, the same Duncan that Barristan beat when he was 16. Duncan, who is the main protagonist in the 3 short stories George Martin has put out in between main series books, was notoriously involved in a horrific accident that took place in a tourney during his youth. To avoid anyone recognizing the name Duncan the Tall and bringing trouble his way, he entered the lists as a Mystery Knight, going by the name of the Gallows Knight. A pretty dark way to style yourself, since a gallows tree is just a tree where people are hanged. He only gave himself this name because the shield he got for cheap still had the sigil of its last owner, and he didn't change it yet. The dummy thought he would have the crowd's love, even with the ominous name and sigil. But he got defeated in the first tilt, despite being absurdly large and strong. Think Hodor, but slightly more coherent. Further back in the story, the first Mystery Knight ever mentioned in the story is the Serpent in Scarlet. We get to know all about this character in the latest lore book about Targaryens called Fire and Blood. In the middle of a Targaryen royal wedding in King's Landing, a tourney was held to select the next members of the Kingsguard. The Serpent in Scarlet was more slender than most, but made up for it in skill and won the crowd over. Tourneys are mostly remembered for the jousts, but melees also take place, and this was a type of competition where the Kingsguard members would be selected from. The Serpent didn't make it to the end and was unmasked. Turned out, she was the female daughter of Lord Darkland of Duskendale, named Jonquil Dark, which explained why she had to hide her identity. This just made the whole event even more thrilling for the small folk. While she never could become a true knight because of her gender, Jonquil would be assigned as the Queen's sworn shield and got to keep her scarlet getup. Let the Kingsguard have to keep all the blood off their white capes. The son of this same queen that Jonquil guarded over would also become a Mystery Knight. Prince Balon Targaryen must have inspired Barristan with his antics, because at the age of 16, he too entered the lists before he was even a knight, in a tourney held at Old Oak in the Reach. Still a squire, he went by the Silver Fool, referencing the common Targaryen trait of silver hair. He did pretty well, taking out seasoned knights, before being defeated and unmasked. The knight that beat him immediately knighted the prince on the spot. One of the more lovable characters in the lore, also a Targaryen prince, lived around 120 years before the main story begins. One of the worst kings was in power during this time, King Aegon Targaryen IV, nicknamed the Unworthy. His younger brother Aemon the Dragon Knight was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and not just because of his family ties. The character is legendary. I made a whole damn video going on about how he's the greatest knight in the story. King Aegon treated his younger sister wife horribly, and with a tourney coming up, he wanted to name one of his mistresses the Queen of Love and Beauty, a custom that the tourney champion gets the rights to. Aegon knew his brother Aemon would win and name their sister the Queen of Love and Beauty out of love and respect. So to prevent that from happening, Aemon was forbidden from taking part. He was just that good. To not see his sister dishonored in front of the whole realm, Aemon entered as a mystery knight, remembered as the Knight of Tears. And you know he won the whole thing. Their stories don't end as well as this legend of the Knight of Tears. King Aegon the Unworthy would indirectly cause the deaths of both these tragic characters. The last mystery knight I have to talk about is the most recent one, and coincidentally the most impactful. 20 years before the story begins, the greatest tourney in recent history was being held in Harrenhal, so lords, merchants, and small folk were gathering from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms. Howland Reed, who was nearby in the Riverlands, thought he would check out this historic event, but ended up getting bullied by some squires on the way there. Howland, who's Mira and Jojen's father, belongs to a race of northerners called Cronnogmen, don't have the best reputation outside their swamps. The people, who are smaller than most, are ridiculed as frog eaters, which is actually true. But anyways, Lyanna Stark, Ned's younger sister, came to his rescue and fought the three larger squires off with a tourney sword. The story has built her up to be essentially an older version of Arya Stark, a very willful and fierce character who loved sword fighting and horse riding more than the stereotypical female-associated hobbies. The knights, who the three bullies were squiring for, all were winning in the tilts, until they were challenged by a mystery knight, who was shorter than most and in ill-fitting armor. The sigil on his or her shield was a smiling weirwood tree, so got the name of the Knight of the Laughing Tree. All three were defeated, and those were the only men the mystery knight challenged. As the prize, the Knight of the Laughing Tree only wanted the squires to be taught honor, and they were punished harshly. This is the worst possible era to be disguised as a mystery knight, since the Mad King was still in power and in attendance at the tourney at Harrenhal. This was the first instance of a person entering the list anonymously having consequences. The Mad King was deeply paranoid and psychotic, somehow convinced himself the mystery knight was an enemy out to get him. Crazy guy thought the weirwood tree on the shield was laughing at him. First, he wanted all other knights in the lists to focus on defeating the Knight of the Laughing Tree to unmask him. But by the next day, when the jousts were to resume, the mystery knight was gone, believing him to be a traitor because who else wouldn't show their face. He had men dispatched to search for the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Even Rhaegar Targaryen, the king's own son, who he didn't even trust, was ordered to find him. But the only thing that turned up was the shield. It's heavily implied that the mystery knight was Lyanna Stark. You could argue it might have been Howland Reed if he didn't previously say he had no experience with horse and lance. Nothing is explicitly told to readers about who the masked character was, so all the wild theories are welcome, but let's be real, it could only be Lyanna. The tourney continued and was full of exciting turn of events, living up to all the hype. And it ended with Rhaegar crowning Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty over his own wife and mother of his children. We don't know of any interactions between these two characters before Rhaegar had gifted her with winter roses. So it is possible that competent prince was able to find out who the mystery knight was, and so impressed that he left his wife for Lyanna. With the current story's climax right around the corner, there probably won't be enough time for a major tourney to be detailed and introduce another mystery knight, so the Knight of the Laughing Tree won't be topped. I know I didn't mention Simon Toyne and the confusing situation where Barristan Selmy thinks he remembers the outlaw disguising himself as a mystery knight, but his inner dialogue contradicts the story's timeline. It's just too messy for me to even try and break down. Seems like something editors missed before publication. These conflicting parts happen from time to time, but it's to be expected for a fictional world that's this expansive, with one man doing all the heavy lifting. It's kind of funny seeing George Martin try to uncover himself by saying it was Barristan misremembering. Blame old man Barry. Alright guys, appreciate all you for watching, I'll see y'all next week.